And now I'm going to be joined by some real industry experts to debate some of these findings. So if you want to come up and join me. Musical chairs. I sat down in time to the music.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for coming along and joining us to debate some of those findings. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, but before I do, I want to tell me your observation in terms of the major drivers behind the growth of programmatic advertising as part of your introduction. Ferran, over to you first because you're closest to me.
Sure.
Do these results resonate with you? Those drivers, do they resonate with you? Are you seeing something different?
No, they do.
And introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm Ferran. I take care of DSP relationships in Southern Europe at Samsung Ads. It's nice to meet you all. And today I'll try to bring my connected TV background. I've been in connected TV the last 7 years. And these results do resonate to me. Actually, I like the slide where you see country by country, how they differ as well. Markets like Spain, where I'm from, it's only like 37% adoption, but the UK is way forward in that sense. But the drivers seem to be the same in these markets, and yeah, cost efficiencies and...
Yeah, I don't know if anyone noticed on the slide, but I think it was, for the UK specifically, it was like 83% of display was now traded programmatically, which doesn't surprise me, but I guess across some of the markets that might come across as quite surprising.
Yeah, in Southern Europe it's a bit less, and it's also more programmatic guaranteed as well. So at least on CTV.
Okay. And Nicky?
Hi, I'm Nicky. I'm Senior Director of Ad Solutions at PubMatic for EMEA, working on SSP side. I think that the results resonated well with me and what we're seeing. I think undoubtedly the past few years have been unpredictable in terms of planning for brands, and buyers have had to be really agile in the way that they're delivering campaigns, and programmatic is absolutely built for that. And I think that's where we've seen the resulting growth. The fact that you can be agile, you can optimize towards performance in real time at a point where budgets are the same or slimmer is really very important, and I think that's where it's thriving.
And lastly but not least, Benjamin.
Hi, so I oversee products at Triton. I do agree that it's growing. I actually have some stats related to audio. So we've seen that in the last 2 months, there was a 62% growth in Europe versus 12% in the US. So the growth is quite solid. In Europe, we're seeing that the shopping, automotive, luxury business are the top buyers categories. Trying to hit music, news, and politics, then followed by law, government, home and garden as what has grown quite strongly here. But we've added about 1,200 brands in the marketplace this year compared to the previous one. So audio is doing well.
Awesome. So we talked about like the drivers, we talked about efficiencies, obvious efficiencies. One of the kind of observations that we saw quite early on there was that there's been a flip. So in 2022, we were talking cost as being a barrier to entry in programmatic, and that's now been swapped out by concerns around the quality of media that's being bought. Can you dig into that a little bit, especially from a CTV perspective, right? Because it's exciting because all of a sudden I can reach maybe a light TV viewer in a TV viewing experience, but it's going to be cheaper than my kind of linear broadcast buy. But I don't really know what I'm buying. And so concerns around quality. Tell me a little bit.
Yeah, it's something we saw in the report and we've heard in market as well, that advertisers might have this concern. And indeed, you mentioned trackers before. Trackers could help there. But also, like, I think sometimes we forget that programmatic is only the way to buy, but we have to know the what we buy. And that's where the relationship with the publishers, with your tech vendors is very important to make sure, go beyond the report, go beyond the dashboard and see where is the placement, how premium it is, especially in connected TV, which is a big, high CPMs, right? So it's an important investment for the final advertiser. And that's transparency, discoverability as well, go beyond the actual dashboard and talk to your supplier of inventory.
Okay. And talk to your supplier of inventory, how is PubMatic kind of helping advertisers navigate those concerns around quality?
Yeah, I thought the results on that were really interesting as well, where now we're looking at a call out for kind of quality supply. We're hearing that a lot from our partners as well. That's why we're seeing the rise of SPO, where people want to understand more where their money's going, what they're actually buying, that the environments are congruent with their kind of their brand goals. We are very consultative with the publishers that we work with. We take responsible investment very seriously. There's been a lot of talk in market recently about MFAs, or made for advertising environments. At PubMatic, we've made the move to say we won't support those going forward, because we feel that it's not the best experience for the viewer. It's not the type of environment that we get a lot of demand from our partners. And also there are challenges potentially around the quality of the content and whether it's delivering truthful claims or misinformation. They also reportedly emit more carbon than the average, so around 27% above the average carbon emissions. So it's not particularly great for people or planet. And there's so many more quality environments that brands can invest in and buyers can access through the platform that we can make available, and we do make available. And I think that's really important.
So in audio, in terms of brand safety, the challenge, as we always have in audio, is we're a newcomer, and there's no visual in audio. So there's a lot of the technology that is not necessarily applicable out of the gate. So there've been a lot of investment by different companies building brand safety inside podcasts, mostly because the broadcast industry is already regulated by law. You need to have a license. So that is being managed by the different broadcasting organizations across all countries. But for podcasts where that is not applicable, this is where you need to do semantic extraction, and then you need AI, which is the team of the day, to be able to extract what is being said, then try to map that against different type of scoring mechanism. It's still early stage. The tech lab is trying to figure out how to make sure this is compatible, because again, it's not something you can have something like a bot parsing a page and reporting back to the DSP, so it requires a bit more connecting middleware. So we're getting there. So there's and then as in podcasts, especially when you look at the top podcasts, Joe Rogan, there's a lot of stuff that you may not want to be associated with when you're a brand. So a lot of the big podcasts could be not necessarily what big brands are expecting. So that's slowing down a bit, though the solutions are getting there. The other big challenge in audio, for which we specifically at Triton working on, is bringing broadcast inventory for programmatic trading. And when I say broadcast, it's not the streaming, it's literally what is on the airwaves, to be able to do spot replacement in real time. So this is the next frontier that will unleash even more value in the audio space.
So it'd be churlish not to mention AI. In fact, you both skirted on AI just then, and you referenced semantics and natural language processing as a form of artificial intelligence, and there have been DSPs and SSPs that have been operating with machine learning for some time as well. So I think it's probably, we underestimate how much artificial intelligence is being used in our industry today. And I think sometimes when we think about AI, we're really just thinking about what's in the hype at the moment, which is generative AI, which is huge. And on that topic of generative AI, Nicky, you just touched on MFA. Are we not in a position where actually we're going to see it much easier for businesses to create content purely made for advertising? And is there an argument that actually if the audience is engaged, that what's to say that content isn't quality, if quality is based upon how the user's engaging?
I think it's definitely a conversation, but it depends on what regulations that content is adhering to. So if you think about some of the fantastic environments that we're able to work with, news titles, for example, and the very high standards that they hold themselves to, and with industry bodies, but also within those organisations and the editor having the final say. It's a structure that is well known and has been working for a very long time, and constantly being reviewed, of course. But you would hope that those additional lines of content would also be adhering to a similar kind of structure and benchmark of quality.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got businesses that help newspapers also extend their reach by creating even more new pieces of content using artificial intelligence. So again, it's like, how do we? I think it's a new era, isn't it? Definitely, we don't have all the answers around it. It's a movable feast. 100% agree, though, that we need to have some measures in place to help people navigate it.
Especially when sustainability was one of the concerns, in the report as well, one of the barriers to more adoption. And that's a concern in display, but also on connected TV. And you can see the publishers are starting looking at podded requests for ad break. Usually, back in a few months ago, they were sending one request for each of the ads within an ad break, and now we can just send a request for all the whole ad break, which actually improves the carbon footprint much a lot.
And so are we seeing like the reduction in the number of businesses that we buy from as a potential answer to sustainability then, or buying sustainably?
It shouldn't. It's actually what is changing is the way that the requests are sent to the SPs. And basically it's more efficient. Instead of sending 8 requests for 8 ads in an ad break, we just send one that includes the 8. So it shouldn't impact the amount of advertisers.
Okay.
We should, though, apply the right tools to solve the problem, because funny enough, the supply path optimization desire of some agencies at the moment in the audio space creates more hops, because they will send, let's say, a vast tag that bypasses, let's say, the SSP to go straight in the ad server, but then they're still getting requests from the SSP, which is connected to their DSP of choice. And sometimes there's so many systems that are calling the same inventory that we need to call back the buyer saying, okay, what do you want to do? Because we'll optimize it with the least amount of connection possible, but it's not by you sending a vast tag that is helping. It actually creates more auction and more exposure of the same inventory. So I think the two parties have to really work closely to make sure, are we trying to just add another layer versus using what is already in place and reduce the amount of requests, to your point, to have one auction that can have multiple bids from, let's say, the same agency that is representing multiple brands. And if they have a deal, they can try to auction everything at once rather than send a bunch of different tags that are just multiplying the number of the requests and then boiling the ocean at the end.
And I think it is about simplifying it. So as you say with SPO, it's working with fewer, better partners, essentially, making sure you've got the most direct route to that supply. There are lots of different levers that you can pull in programmatic to have positive effects. So we work with a party that streams content into the ad player, and that helps to suppress the carbon emissions there. You can explore efficiencies when it comes to targeting, so thinking about maybe implementing targeting on SSP side as well. And then you get good uplifts in performance often on that too. So many different avenues to explore, and I think it's an open conversation that as an industry we're definitely having. I think the results that we saw in the research as well were really interesting around that it is top of mind when sustainability is a topic. There's some fantastic work that's being done within our industry already to do test and learn, as well as obviously conversation and exploratory work. And I would call out some of the excellent work that's being done at Group M. So they've publicly expressed their ambition to be net zero by 2030. They're working hard to find solutions through the programmatic supply chain and being very generous in sharing those findings with their peers in industry through the IAB Sustainability Committee as well, because I think they, like many of us in this room, understand that the challenge is vast, but actually in working together we have a better chance of solving that. and coming up with innovation, or as you say, using what we already have, but through a new lens to actually drive towards those goals.
And on that note, we're also starting to see agencies start to build their own kind of premium marketplaces or curated marketplaces by partnering up with a limited number of SSPs than they would have done historically. And then on the other side, we've got DSPs that are wanting to do the same with the publishers. So how do you see that playing out? How do you see that kind of this move to the buy side by the SSPs and a move from I'm going to get confused now, buy side to the publishers, the DSPs to the publishers, and the SSPs to the advertisers? How do you see that playing out?
When it comes to sustainability?
When it comes to reducing the supply path, which has an impact on sustainability, but how do you see that playing out in terms of the traditional kind of way media is bought programmatically, if you can say traditional?
I think, again, it comes down to the results and the efficiency. It's an overarching conversation across a number of different points of consideration. If we're thinking about driving growth in the programmatic landscape, I think if we can find ways of finding more quality supply, making it more sustainable, there will be lots of investment regardless of the route, because it will become progressively a more efficient and appealing way of delivering targeted advertising campaigns at scale.
And it might also help with the other barrier, the quality of inventory concerns from the advertiser side, so that could help as well.
If it's done in collaboration, it works. I think my point earlier is to avoid trying to short circuit what's already in place. So if the buyer wants to use an SSP to curate content, instead of issuing new tags, we can just use the already existing OpenRTB connection. It avoids doubling the traffic. So that's where collaboration is needed between the different tech vendors, and for the agency to understand that there's different ways to execute whatever they have in mind, and we need to sit down to figure out what is taking the least amount of energy in terms of achieving it while following the best practice. Because what I've seen as a problem is if you want to, let's say, create, again in audio because that's what we do, but if you're trying to do header bidding that does not really exist in audio, so basically you try to short circuit the flow, then you may not be able to recognize your audience, because you may be using a DSP that is expecting, let's say, a mobile ad ID, but you're buying podcasts, which is distributed via RSS. I'm sorry, it's a bit technical, but it won't send you a mobile ad ID. So at the end, you're not achieving what you want. Whereas if you're working in the right order with the right pipes, there's a way to make sure that we can work for the audience or the cohort to match the expectation of the agencies. That's why it requires collaboration across the value chain, not trying to bypass all of the players, because otherwise you don't have the people that have to do the piping. You cannot bypass the pipes. You have to work with the pipes in place.
And I think supporting media, I've got my 5 minutes, so I'm going to go to questions in a minute. In fact, I'll go to questions in a minute. I just want to make one observation. We want to buy more responsibly. We want to collaborate to buy in a more sustainable way. But let's not forget, we still are being held to account by marketeers and their agencies, because at the end of the day, we're in the advertising game and we're wanting to sell products and services to audiences. And cookies are going away. IDs are of sort that we're used to are also going away. And one of the observations was that actually there's been a surge in the use of third-party data. So the KPIs that the advertisers and the agencies, and as a consequence, the agencies are holding us to account on, are still traditional performance metrics that rely on traditional measurement and attribution. So what's going to happen when the cookies go away? How are we going to buy efficiently, sustainably, and reach the audiences we want to reach, and measure the audiences or measure the success of those campaigns?
So I can answer for the connected TV space if you want. If you think about a TV, it's always been like a branding environment, like big screen, probably the biggest screen of the house sometimes. So in that sense, like the branding KPIs of viewability and VCR, they shouldn't go away. They shouldn't be affected. And when it comes to data, as it is branding, it's less about first party and third party. In our case, for example, you mentioned before second party data. Samsung Ads, thanks to the consent of some of the TVs, we can try to help advertisers dive into CTV with second party data and help them bridge the traditional TV and with the connected TV space.
Go ahead.
I would agree with you on what you just said there, and I think branding metrics will definitely remain. I think there's a lot of work as well that's being done in our industry around attention and what attention means. That's becoming a bigger concern when it comes to measurement. There's a lot of exciting opportunity coming up with first-party data, working with publishers closely as well to understand what they can offer to buyers when it comes to optimising campaign with the rich amount of information that they have. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, but I suppose it's around how is that communicated to buyers, how accessible is that, what are the proof points. There's always going to be work done or to be done on that.
So I think the premise that everyone is targetable with an identifier is actually not true, because not everyone is online with the same type of behavior. And media has been traded, advertising has been in existence for ages, even before internet, shockingly. And I think with using AI, you could easily build model that already exists, that can prove that you can target with a mix of audience targeting and contextual targeting and have the KPI in place. All of those models exist. I think, unfortunately, the ad tech 1.0 is still hooked on the drug of thinking that third-party cookie is the panacea that solves all problems. But this will disappear, and those models that already exist will finally be in the spotlight. And I think everything will be fine, probably even better, because you're narrowing your scope to what you can recognize, meaning you're over-indexing against Chrome, for instance.
Brilliant. We've got literally 2 minutes for questions to the panel. We've got any questions? Don't be shy. We've got a microphone. Brilliant.
Hi, Ben. I just wanted to ask on that last point, can you give some examples of what those more traditional methods that maybe have existed where the spotlight will get to when third-party cookies goes away?
Yeah, it's basically all of the surveys or recall. Or you could use like traditional point of sale. There's different things. The point is you will have a subset of users that you use as the seed of a model that will project the performance across the rest of the buy. So there's different type of methodologies, but that works fine.
I think we're at time, so I'm going to wrap up there. But we have a round of applause for the panel. Thank you so much for sharing your insight into